The more you work with data, the more you realize that how you store the data may not be how you want to display it. And that's what this entire video is about. How do you manipulate strings and numbers to look like how you want them to look without having to manipulate the actual data in your database or wherever you're pulling that data from? So this is a vanilla JavaScript challenge, but in spite of the fact that it's vanilla JavaScript, you're going to use a lot of these same kinds of methods with things like React and other things like that, because it's really methods that live on strings and live on numbers in addition to the international API. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. Hey, what's up? My name is Chris, and welcome to Coding in Public. You can see here I've got this GitHub link open. It'll be in the description. This is the fifth in a series on vanilla JavaScript challenges, and this one is all about formatting strings and numbers. So if you come to the link, you can go ahead and just click on Challenge 5, or you can come up here and select it right here. Once you select it, if I can give myself a little bit more room, you should actually see this code button. You can then download this and unzip it, and then you can open it up in your favorite code editor. That's what I've done over this way, and you can see that I should have three files, just an index.html, main.js, and a style.css. Now, for the most part, we're just going to be working with the main.js file, so that's what I'm going to have open. That's really all you need. And then I've got an extension called Live Server. You can get this started however you want. If you want to add your own like dev server to it, go for it. But I'm just going to click this to run Live Server. All right, so we should be good. If I open this right over here, there we go. This is what it should look like to start with. Now, what we're going to be doing is formatting strings and numbers. And you'll see here that I've got just kind of some basic CSS styling. So you shouldn't have to touch the styling at all. Just kind of work through these problems one after the other. Now, like with all of these, what I'd encourage you to do is to first work through it yourself and then play the video and work through it with me. I will have chapters below if you want to do the strings first and then play that section, then do the numbers next and play that section. But you may find that you have different solutions than I have, and that's totally fine. Yours might be better than mine. Or you might say, hey, mine was kind of hacked together, but if you got the end result, that's okay. That's what we're going after. Now, of course, we want to continue to improve and find new ways of working that are more efficient, but start with just trying to get the end result. Then you can optimize and get a little bit better as you go. All right, you ready? Go ahead and work through at least the string section and then play through the video. I'll pause, let you do that, and then I'll work through it myself. All right, hopefully that went well for you. The first thing I'm going to do is come over here and read the first prompt here, loop through the people array and insert an li tag for each person inside the UL with the ID of people. So let's go ahead and open that index.html page just to see what we got. So ID of people right here. So it's a UL, so I should be able to select that. So let's start by selecting just that ID. So I'm going to call this something like people ID, and I'll set this to document.querySelector, and I will select the ID of people. All right, so now I should have access to this. Now what I want to do is loop through my array up top of people, and then I want to basically add this inside of this UL list. First of all, I need to spell const correctly, but let's go ahead and there's a couple different ways we can do this. I think let's just set this as the inner HTML, which is probably not what I would normally do, but I normally am not adding these things programmatically anyhow. This is more just practice. So let's take the people ID. We'll say .inner HTML. I'm going to set this, and what I want to set it to is people dot. And I think in this case, I will just map over them. So I'll add them to an array and then join them on nothing. So what we'll do is we'll map over each person that I'll just call P. For each person, I will return a string of HTML. It'll be an li tag, and this will just have the person's name, which again, their name is just P, since that's what I'm calling it as I'm looping through it. All right, so just like that, then I need to join it. Well, let me not join it first and show you what that looks like. So if I save this, you see that I'm getting them all, but I get these commas, and that's because this is map always returns an array. So as it's then outputting that, it's going to include commas in between each of those. So I need to actually join it on nothing. And now it should just give me that. And if I inspect it, let's see. You can see it's just a bunch of li tags, which is exactly what I want. Okay, cool. So we got that set and ready. Let's go to the next one. So we haven't really formatted it too much. We just outputted it on the DOM. But add the list of people as a string as the next sibling of the heading listed names. All right, so the list should be wrapped in a p tag and formatted as a comma separated list. So I mentioned up top here that you should get familiar with the toLocale string and the international API. This is super helpful, this INTL API, because it formats tons of stuff, and that's really what most of this series or this video is about. So we'll say const, and why don't we just say something like names header or something like that, names header, and I'll go ahead and select document.querySelector. Let's see, next sibling of the heading listing names. Does it have something? Yeah, okay, so it has an ID of names. So let's use that query selector. I did this long enough ago that I'm basically doing this live with you. So again, you may come up with a better solution than me, and that's totally fine. Okay, so I've got names header. Now what I want to do is insert a paragraph tag right after that. So let's go ahead and just say names header dot insert adjacent HTML. This takes two things, a position, so we'll do it after it's ended. And then the second thing is it takes in whatever string of text we want to add. Now this is going to be a paragraph tag, except I probably need to go ahead and make this a template string so that I can just insert HTML directly in here with JavaScript. So we'll say inside the paragraph tag, I want the people. And to start with, I can just do toLocale string like that. And it is a method. And if I save it, I think that gives us what we want. Yeah, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Now, if this kind of throws you off, this after end, you can do it a bunch of different ways too. You could like select something and append a child and actually create a paragraph element and then add inner text and all that kind of stuff. But this is maybe a little bit more compact. But what we're doing is grabbing this ID right here and then saying after the final closing tag of this H3, then insert some HTML, and here's the string you should insert right here. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, next, add the conjunction and between the final two names. Now, you may be tempted to do this by like hand rolling your own little function that does that, and that's fine if that's what you did. However, there is an API, that INTL API, that does this for you. So maybe what I'm going to do is just copy this, and then I'll go ahead and comment that one out, just so it's up there and ready for you in the finished code. And what I want to do is, I think toLocale string provides this as an option. Let's see if it does. So you should be able to say type and then give it conjunction. Maybe? No. All right, that doesn't work. All right, so good try. But this toLocale string on dates and on numbers sometimes can pull in from the INTL API. It's just basically a wrapper for it, the method itself. But we might have to hand roll our own method and format it that way. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think what I'm going to do, because I remember down below here, let's see, we got like or Ringo, which is another option here of disjunction. So I'm going to create a little function up here. So let's just call it like format string equals, we'll take in some kind of string. And then what I want to do is, let's go ahead and do a new INTL, and I can just say list format. The first thing you would give this is some kind of region or some kind of locale it has to use. What I'm going to pass in is undefined, which means use whatever the browser is that the person is coming from. So if they happen to be in India, or if they happen to be in Brazil or the UK, use whatever their local machine would prefer as far as styling. However, I want to provide an options object, which is the second thing you can pass in here. And in this case, I want to pass it the type of conjunction. So not confunction, conjunction, all right, junction. Now I need to actually name this so I can reference it. So we'll say like format conjunction. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'll return the format conjunction dot format, and I want to format the string. All right, so if that doesn't make sense, hopefully it will when we're done here, and I'll probably end up modifying this as we go. But what I want to do is insert after all this, I do want a paragraph tag. I want to call my format string, and I want to pass it my people. So let's first of all see if it works, then I'll explain what I did. All right, and this is why we check before we explain what we did, because I think this needs to be string of conjunction. Okay, there we go. So now it actually shows correctly over here. So let me talk through what I did. So there is this new international list format option where you can pass in a certain locale, or you can just use the browser's default wherever the person is coming from. That's what I've done here. And then you can pass it some options. There are a bunch of options you can pass it, but one of the options is type of conjunction. And what it will do is take an array of items and it will format them with this format method. It will with whatever type you pass it. So in this case, conjunction. If I don't have a type, I think it will just be, yeah, I think that might be the default actually. So maybe you don't even have to do anything. So a list format takes a list of items, an array of items, and then formats it according to that string. So in this case, maybe we don't need this at all. So we might modify this more as we get through, but now you can see how it actually works. Okay, next, add a total number of people as an appended string. Okay, so all I would do is come in here and inside a parentheses, since I say it has to be parentheses, I'm just going to add people dot length. All right, so now it says 4. Perfect, we got that. Let's add a little check mark. Check. Now, all right, now let's comment that out. I don't know how numbering works, evidently, because this is 5, and this is 6, and this is 7. This should be fixed by the time you see it, but here we go. Change the paragraph to read John, Paul, George, or Ringo. So the only difference here is, like I mentioned, you can pass in disjunction, like that, and you can see or Ringo. So what I would probably do is have format string, and I would probably do it as an object here, and I'll explain why, because I'm going to want a string, and that would be whatever I pass in, and then I would also want a format option. So maybe I just call this type. So this could be disjunction or whatever. Then over here, what I would do is add like type right here. And maybe so this isn't too confusing, I could say like formatting type. And this would be formatting type. Now, if I don't pass in anything, I could set a default up here. So I could say conjunction would be my default. And let's see if I did all this right. Okay, so perfect. Now all I have to do is when I pass this in right here, I'd have to say inside of this object, string equals my people. And then I don't have to pass in a type. Now to get it to actually work, I need to change this as well. Okay, there we go. So now what I could also do is if I pass in a disjunction, I could use that formatting type. So that means right here, I could pass in a second thing. That would be formatting type, and this could be disjunction. Now, if I was using TypeScript, I could set this up to where it has to be one of these two, but obviously we're just using vanilla JavaScript because that's kind of the whole thing. All right, so there we go. If I don't pass this in, the default is going to be and, because that's how I've set it up here. Now, the reason I do this as an object, once again, is so I don't have to remember the order, like first a string and then the formatting type. I just know that on this object, I've got a couple different options, and usually within here, VS Code will actually give you those prompts, all right, those autocomplete. So if I come in here, string, you see how it gives me that property automatically? It's actually using TypeScript behind the scenes. So in this case, people. Now, before we move on, this isn't technically a string. I should probably call this array. So let me grab this, and we'll call it array. How about just like that, ARR, and same thing here, ARR. Okay, so we also did this down here, and let's go with 6. Okay, show only the first 3 names, so I could do the same thing. Maybe let's stop and copying this down multiple times and just bring it down here so it's a little cleaner. So here we go. Formatting type, disjunction is still fine. That's still fine. The only difference here is I actually want to change this. So I could do a couple things. I could do a slice and do like a 0 to 3. And that would only give me the first 3. And you'll notice that the disjunction updates automatically. But because I've also got another one here, I think what I might do is create like a const like first 3 names. So just create a copy of it. And that way I can just use the copy here and here. So this would just be people.slice 0 to 3. Then what I can do is just pass this in as my array, and this is in as my array, and that should update automatically. So only the last 2 names, so let's do the same thing. I'll bring this down and bring this down as well. And we'll call this, grab all those last 2 names. This will be people, and in this case, I guess we could go like -2, is that right? Let's see if that works. -2. Should read Paul or Ringo. Well, it should be George or Ringo, so I messed that up too. Sorry about that. Again, this will be updated by the time you see it. We got those strings done. Let's now move on to the numbers. And again, if you've been following along and have watched those strings, now I'd pause it, try the numbers, and then play again. All right, hopefully you had a good go of that. Let's now create a new array called unique numbers with all unique numbers in the numbers array. So you can see here I've got some duplicates. The easiest way to change this up, to copy it, is just to use a set. So that's what I'll do. We'll call it unique numbers, and I'll say new set, and what I want to pass is my numbers. Now this is not an array right now, but if I console log this, and I come over this way, you can see here I've got a set, and it should have only the numbers I want. Now how do I get this to an array? Well, there are a couple different ways, but probably the quickest is just to use the spread operator. So I can do it like this, new set, and then the unique numbers will be an actual array. So once again, I'll pull this up over here. You can see I've got an array now of just unique numbers. All right, insert the sum of the new unique numbers array as the next sibling of the heading listing numbers. So let's see, I've got this right here. I wonder if there's going to be a good way to select this, because I think, if I remember correctly, all of these, you're just inputting things one after the other. So I think what I'm going to do is come over here. Oh, it's the next sibling. Okay, so let's just grab this ID now. Let's not overthink it. So const, we'll do numbers ID document.query selector, and I'll select the ID of numbers. Then I want numbers.id, and again, I would tend to just use like insert adjacent HTML, so that's what I'm going to do. Insert adjacent HTML. You can do something else if you want to. And we'll do it after end, so after the final tag of that H3, then I want to insert this string. Now, the easiest way to get a number from a list, an array of items, is to use the reduce method. There are other ways to do it too. Like you could map through them or, whatever you want, or have an external variable that you then call, but I'm just going to use the reduce. So I'll take my numbers, let's see right here, this array. Oh, and it needs to be unique numbers. So unique numbers dot reduce, and this is going to take in the accumulated value and then also like the current number. I think I can do this in a little one-liner, so I'm just going to do an implicit return and start with a number. Let me do this and I'll walk you through what I did. So I'll take the ACC and I'll plus the number to it. Now, if I save that, it should add it in right here. It's just going to be a node, a text node, so I need it to actually be in a paragraph tag. So that means I need to surround this thing with a paragraph tag like this, and then this needs to be a template string. Okay, cool. So now it's listed in here just like this. Let me talk through what I did. So this reduce is like a map, except what it does is it also gets access to the total amount through the loop. The superpower of reduce, in addition to giving you kind of one thing at the end, is that you don't have to return an array like a map or a filter or those kinds of methods. Instead, you can start with a number or an object or whatever you want, and each time you loop through the data, you're basically increasing or returning this ACC, and you can increase it, decrease it, add to it, not add to it, whatever you want. You also get the thing you're looping through, like with map or with filter or anything like that. So what I've done is I've taken this array of unique numbers right here, wherever that's at. Let's comment this out. And what I'm doing is looking at the very first item. In this case, I know it's going to be 1 because the unique one should start with 1, 2, 3, I guess 4, 5, 6. So it should have those 6. So what I'm doing is I'm looping through them. And the first time through, it says, what's the ACC? Well, it's whatever I passed in here. So it starts at 0. The first time through, the number is going to be 1. So it takes 0 plus 1 and returns that to the next loop. The next loop, now this is 1, and it looks and says, what's the number now? Well, now it's 2. So it's going to take 1 plus 2 and give me 3, and then return that to the next iteration. 3 plus 3 is 6, etc., all the way through until it's done. And when it doesn't have anything else to loop through in the array, it just returns the ACC in the very end. So that's how I've got 21 right here using this one little one-liner here of reduce. Okay, next let's loop through each number in the unique numbers array and insert an li tag for each number inside the UL with the ID numbers list. Okay, so there was that numbers list UL. So let's go ahead and grab that. We'll just call it numbers list UL equals document.query selector. And we're going to select that thing with an ID of numbers list UL. Now, before I go any further, if this reduce method, by the way, was kind of confusing, I did a video not too long ago explaining how it works in a lot more detail because I was really tripped up on it, I think on a live stream if I remember correctly. Okay, so loop through each number in the unique numbers array, insert an li tag for each number inside the UL. Okay, so let's go ahead and take my numbers list ID, and I'll just .enter HTML because it's the internal HTML of this UL tag. And let's take our unique numbers and we'll map over them. And I'll take the number and then map through it. And maybe I should break this out just to make it a little more clean. I don't know. I think I'll leave it like this. Right? Hopefully this is going to make sense. I'll take an li and I'll close it off with an li like this. And inside here, what I want is the number itself. So I can just call it num. And then in the very end, what I need to do is, let's see, I need to join it on nothing. Same kind of thing we ran into up here. All right, now that did not output anything, so this is not a function. Okay, so let's see what this is. Is that not a thing? Numbers list. So maybe you can't do an inner HTML of a UL. So let's do insert adjacent HTML. Let's strip this stuff out. All right, so we'll call this like const list equals all that. Then just to see what we're getting here, let me go ahead and just console log this list. Okay, so I am getting this. It's just a string. That's what I want it to look like. Let's also console.log the numbers list UI like this. All right, so I am getting the actual UL. I think if I don't join it, I can actually add it as a numbers list UI .inner HTML, and this can be my list .join like this, I think. Let's see. Something happened. All right, there we go. All right, well, I made more work of that than it needed to be. I'm not exactly sure why this .join doesn't work when you do it in line like this. But either way, you see what we did is we took our array of unique numbers, we mapped over them and returned this little bit of HTML. And then what I did is I took that array of those HTML items and I joined them on nothing so they don't have that little comment in between them, and added that to the inner HTML of the UL. All right, number 4 here, format each number in the unique numbers array as a currency string. So I'm guessing that's after it's already there. So I need to get access to that. So let's just take const li's to currency, I don't know, something like that. We're going to take the numbers list UI dot query selector all, and what I want to select is any li inside of that, okay, because they should be in the DOM now. Then what I can do is I can format each of those. So I think probably the easiest way is to take that, let's just call these list items. So take these list items, and then I'm going to loop over them. Now, in this case, I'm not going to try to return something in like an array like I've done with maps so far. Just for each of the items, I want to do something. So for each is the best method for that. I'm going to take the item. Now, what I want to return is, let's see, I need the value that's currently there. So let's just say const value equals item.text content. Now, the text itself is going to be a string, but I want to run a method on a number. So let me just double check that that's what I think it's supposed to be. So I'll come over here. Yeah, so each of these is just giving me a string. What I want is for it to be a number. So I can either wrap it in like a number function like this, or the best way to do this, I think, is just to add a plus sign, which should coerce it into a number, and you can see that now these are numbers. Okay, so now that they're numbers, I can use number methods on them, which is what I want. So I'm going to say the item.textContent. This now needs to be equal to, and in this case, I think I want this to be a string in the end. Technically, it should be a string. So I'm going to wrap it like this, but other than that, it should be just writing JavaScript. So I'm going to take the value .toLocale string, which is the same kind of method I showed earlier on a string, but in this case, I can pass it the actual options that I need. So undefined is how I'm going to leave it for the locale, but for the options, there are some options available like style, and this you can pass it currency. Once it has a currency, though, you have to provide it an actual currency. So currency, I need to provide it like USD or whatever. For US dollars, you can do it however you want, but since we have dollars up here, that's what I'm going to do here. And now you can see it's gone through and first added these, then it's found them here in this step 4, and now it's reformatted them. But notice I'm not actually changing the content of the actual data, so that the numbers array up here never changes, so I don't have to actually change the numbers array or the unique numbers array. I'm just formatting it in the DOM, which is what I want. Okay, next, output small amount in a p tag as the next sibling, format the number as a currency string. So I think all of these I'm just doing as like the next sibling, so that I don't have to keep selecting things like this number's ID and like working off of that. I think I'm just going to select the entire section and just append it to the end. So let's use this aria label as our selector. So let me come down here and we'll just say like const section equals document dot query selector, and here I'm going to select the aria label formatting items, and I need to change this up. Okay, so now I've got that section and I can just append items to it. So first of all, section dot append child, and in this case it needs to be an actual node. So if I'm going to append a child, I need to actually create a node up here. So I guess that feels like extra work. Let's not do that. All right, let me write a little function. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to say like append to section or something like that. It's going to take in a string, and then what it's going to do is say section dot insert adjacent HTML. We're going to do before end, and then we're going to add in the string, whatever that happens to be. And we'll just return this. Well, let's make it implicit. So like this. Okay. So we're going to use this all throughout the next several ones, so we don't have to keep typing all that stuff. So I'm going to append to section, and what I want to append is a string. It needs to be a paragraph tag. That's what we just set up top. And the next sibling, format the number as the currency string. So small amount, which I think is a variable up top, if I remember correctly. Let's check. Small amount? Yeah, small amount, medium amount, large amount. All right, so assuming that 1, 2, 3, 4 represents pennies. All right, but it needs to look like this. So this is how I often work with finances or with currency, because it's easier to subtract if you're working with whole numbers rather than decimal places. You get some weird floating point math stuff. So we're going to assume that that's the case. And here what I want to do is, first of all, divide it by 100. That will give me pennies, and automatically it's already formatted. However, it's not yet a $sign. So I want to use the same kind of thing I used up here. So that should be a number that I'm getting off of here. So let me wrap this again since my formatter got rid of that. And then on the end of this, I can do toLocale string and pass an undefined, and then pass in an options object. And I'm just going to do the same thing right here. I would usually have some kind of helper function that would do this for me, so I don't have to keep typing this over and over again, but in this case, that's fine. All right, output amount, medium amount in a paragraph tag. So let's do append to section again, our little helper function. And I want to append a paragraph tag once again. And the ID, it needs to have the ID, medium amount. I'm not sure why I did that, but there you go. Now format the number as a number with only 2 decimal places. So what does it look like normally? Okay, so it's got 3. So here, we're just gonna not change it to currency, just format it differently. So once again, I'm gonna take my medium amount, and this time it is a number, so I can just run it right off the back of this, .toLocale string. I'll pass an undefined once again. And then for the actual options object here, what I want to pass in is maximum fraction digits. And here I just want it to be 2. So if I do that, you can see there it is right there. If I change this to 3, that's what it had originally, you'll see it has 3. So really helpful when you're like rounding numbers or things like that. You can pass in maximum fraction digits and it should round that or cap it off at those 2. There is a way to round it as well, but I don't think I've got an example here. Okay, finally, 2 left, output large amount. We know how to do this, appends to section in a paragraph tag. Okay, excellent. It should be the next sibling to medium amount, and it has to have an ID. No idea why, but it does. All right, a large amount like this. Format it as a number with a comma separated. So let's take our large amount inside a template string here, large amount, and let me come back up top here, large amount. So it doesn't have any formatting, it's just smashed together. One quick note, what you can actually do just to make these things easier to read in your code is add these underscores. So even if you don't want to change the value, adding these underscores makes it easier to read, but it doesn't actually change what it is. So that might be something you want to do, and you can see how I haven't formatted it, but the underscores are not there. So just a little tip. Okay, back down this way to what we were doing. Number 7, large amount. I want to say toLocale string because it is a number, so I can run it right off the back of that. Undefined. And then what I want to do is format it. And there are a couple formatting options, but now that I think about it, I don't think I need to do anything. I think I just leave it like this because toLocale string will use my locale. And in my locale, this is how this should look. So I'll do that. If your locale isn't that way, what you can do, let's see. How did I mess that up? toExponential? What was that? toLocale string. There we go. Yeah. If your locale doesn't do it like that, you can actually add enus and formally tell it use this locale, which is my locale, which should give you something like that. And there it is down here. Format large amount as a compact number with a maximum of 1 fraction digit. So I guess we could either append or we could actually grab the ID. Maybe that's why I had you do this. So let's use that ID. So we'll say large amount equals document .query selector. And what we want is the ID of large amount. And you can't do it like that, so large amount. Then what I want to do is format that text. So I could say large amount dot text content equals, and what I want to do is take the large amount dot text content, and I need to make it a number so I can use this method on it, toLocale string, toLocale string right here. And here, let's see, I do need probably enus, I guess if you're not in my locale. And then there are some compacting methods you can use in this options, or compacting options you can use in this options object. One of them is notation, and notation like this. Let's see, notation. I can pass it compact, and let's come over here, just double check, not a number. All right, so maybe I need to extract this first of all. Value equals, we'll say large amount dot text content. I think that should work. Then I can use value here. Let's see if that works. No. Well, since I'm not sure what's going on, let me go ahead and console log this. Not a number. Okay. Excellent. Let's try this. Okay. I'm actually getting this right here. So let's get rid of this and not do the number thing here. Okay. So I am actually getting a value. So that's good. Oh, I think the problem is because I'm using the string and it has commas in it. I need to strip those commas out if I want to use it directly here. Or I can just append it up here again and kind of skip over number 7. Well, maybe let's go ahead and just strip out all those. So how can we do this? Well, I guess it's string, so we can split it on the commas, which will give us an array. Let's just double check this. So yep, I got an array. Then I can join it. This is going to be so hacked. All right, join on nothing. There we go. So now I got my number back. just what I wanted. Can I just throw a plus on this? And yeah, I get a number. Okay, perfect. And now look at that. All right. So a little hacky. I guess usually you would be formatting this from your actual data, which hopefully would be a number. But what I'm doing is grabbing it after I've already formatted it and added it as a string. Then I'm re-grabbing it here. I'm converting it to a number after I split it on the comma, and then I join it on nothing. So a little extra sauce there, not really needed, but you can see the notation is compact. Now, if I want this to have like a 0.2, like I used up above, I actually need this to also say maximum fraction digits like we did up top. So I'll just copy that down, and in this case, I only want 1. Okay, so there we go, 123.2. That's what it's supposed to look like. All right, once again, I see my instructions were off here. This needs to be B, not M for million, because it is in the billion numbers. All right, well, I will have those instructions fixed for you, so hopefully you don't have to stumble over those like I did. But I hope this video was enjoyable for you. It's a little bit more of a casual video, but walking through this process and kind of how I'm thinking through this, hopefully this was a help to you. I'm sure there are better ways and more compact ways to do a lot of what I did, and there's more verbose ways. And really, there's no right or wrong way. If you get the right result, you did it right. Of course, we want to get better and more compact and more efficient as we go, but starting with something and getting there, you should congratulate yourself for that. And if there's something I did that was stupid, let me know in the description. Happy to learn. I'm always a learner and never the expert. Well, thanks so much. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy coding.